Big W for Bones Studio for this amazing episode. After weeks of disapproval and criticism on Bones Studio for their way of adapting these past few episodes, I gotta say this episode got most of the My Hero fandom's approval for a job well done. Now, as probably most of you saw the episode, I'll go over what the amazing second half of the episode had to offer, but hold up. Let's take a breather and review of what occurred during the first half of this episode. Then I'll go over what happened in the second half and give my thoughts on it. Alrighty, with that out of the way, let's review what happened in this episode of season 5 of the series. The episode begins with Twice, who is accompanied by his fellow clones trying to save Toga, who's losing a lot of blood since her fight. Twice makes a second Toga to do a blood fusion to try to save her. As that was happening, it goes to Spinner, who's dealing with a group of the Liberation Army who's under command by one of the executives named Hanabata, who goes by Mr. Politician. Him being there, Spinner has been trying his best at providing some use to the League of Villains by handling all this crap by himself so that Shigaraki won't use any more of his strength on them. With that conflict ongoing with Spinner struggling, it transitions to the one-on-one duel between Redestro and Shigaraki. We see in their fight as it continues, Redestro's face starts to be covered by more of that brown color. As the fight progresses, we see Shigaraki strikes first but fails targeting Redestro, which in turn Redestro manages to take hold of one of Shigaraki's hand. It should be noted that Redestro's quirk, or as the Liberation Army prefer to call them, meta powers, is a quirk called stress, and he could build up that stress and turn it into his power, which is why his face and whole body is so huge and buffy, as well as the change of his skin color tone, turning into a moldy brown. And so Redestro starts to crush down Shigaraki's hand while he's questioning Shigaraki's motive and what he does, with him as a person having such a troublesome quirk used to destroy with. While being tortured, Shigaraki sees one of his family members' hands on the ground crumbled, which belongs to his sister Hana. He gets a flashback of it presenting the other hands that were preserved, all while All For One was talking to him in a room. Here we see All For One tells Shigaraki to have his deceased family's hands attached to his body so that he could keep those feelings from fading away, as he talks about how negative feelings will heal and fade away. After that, Shigaraki remembers how his older sister Hana would take Shigaraki by the hand whenever he cries. When she was still around, she was the only one who would do that to Shigaraki. Then back to her present, Shigaraki is still being held by Redestro by his large hands, keeps remembering of himself and those past memories. He then proceeds to make Redestro let go of him by managing to use only two of his fingers, the ring and pinky finger, touching Redestro's finger, which activated his decaying quirk. Redestro was confused how Shigaraki pulled his quirk, knowing before that Shigaraki could only activate if he uses all 5 of his fingers, and began to wonder if this is a breakthrough. Closing in on Shigaraki, who's having a mental breakdown as more memories start appearing, making his body itch. Redestro senses that Shigaraki is in the process of awakening his quirk, and while thinking about that possibility, Shigaraki decides to head forward and strike him. Managing to dodge it, he wasn't out of the woods because Redestro notices Shigaraki's physical capabilities have skyrocketed, which from his mind believed that Shigaraki has done some training in harsh conditions to become this way. Seeing how he underestimated Shigaraki, Redestro powers himself up to become this huge monster from his stress quirk, covering it from head to toe, calling this transformation 80% liberation. Redestro launches a huge purple sphere ball, which Shigaraki got himself trapped by, and so was launched back towards the city buildings. While crashing towards them, Shigaraki begins to remember more of his family with the images of his grandparents popping up. Then not long after, from Redestro's position, he gets a phone call from his henchman, Skeptic, who wants Redestro to be careful as he's coming its way. And who he's referring to is no other than Gigantomagnia, who plows the streets and people heading towards where Shigaraki is. We then see Redestro dropping his phone from some pain on his finger, which he noticed came from Shigaraki, who somehow managed to touch him before releasing his purple sphere ball burden move. As he notices that Shigaraki pulls one onwards, Redestro having taken his power head on. Shigaraki also notices for himself that his senses have improved and are rising. Shigaraki pulls out one of his family member's hand from his pocket as he agrees to Redestro's statement, while looking down the hand at what Redestro said earlier, which came down to the conclusion that he wants to destroy. Hearing what he had to say, Redestro begins to power up as he said that Shigaraki, a world without creation, has no future, to which Shigaraki replies he doesn't need a future. From that brink of the moment, it transitions to the unfolding of Shigaraki's memories. As his memories play out, for the first time we see the childhood of Shigaraki unfolded. We see the life of Shigaraki was quite bliss, to say the least, from the outside perspective. What I mean by that is that Shigaraki wasn't raised in a worn-down home or neighborhood. He lived in a big modern house with an older sister, mother, and father, as well as his grandparents. A two-family house where they live is quite spacious with a backyard, and they even have their own dog, who seems to be a Shiba Shiba Inu's breed, which is a Japanese bred dog, which is not a big shocker. It may seem like an average high middle class family living under a blessed roof, since Shigaraki's father is a businessman. But hey, we're talking about Shigaraki here, who possesses his family's hands, so something went wrong here before that led to that. And it doesn't take long to see that in a Shigaraki household, that there's a rule that you should never mention the word hero or associate with it. Young Shigaraki will at times mention the word hero and at times be punished by his dad. In fact, he's so strict on it that this time he made Shigaraki go outside the yard until he learns his quote-unquote lesson to not mention hero. However, what's so messed up about this is that Shigaraki has allergies which causes his eyes to irritate, so he's pretty much out there outside suffering while dealing with those allergies, which the family does not know what he's allergic to. As he was outside, the family were in the kitchen with the wife and mother of Shigaraki telling her husband he's gone too far, but the dad pretty much shrugs that off, saying that you must learn it the hard way pretty much, which in my opinion is messed up, and having to leave your kid outside who's suffering from allergies, why not leave it in his room locked maybe? Allergies are no joke, and in severe cases could kill a person, but that just depends on the circumstances. Our way, that's no way to punish a kid, let alone having to punish a kid because of that reason of admiring heroes, whatever that dad's point of view on heroes is. It's a dumb reason to punish a kid for mentioning hero in any context. And so later in the episode, we see the older sister Hana looking through her father's office and finding a photo. She tags Shigaraki into this as they both saw the photo, and it's a photo of their dad as a kid next to a woman who happens to be Nana Shimura, who we all know is All Might's master, who had a quirk one for all that Deku not possesses. Also, actually know the fact before, and if you don't recall or haven't connected the dots, Nana Shimura is Shigaraki's grandmother. The photo depicts Shigaraki's father as a kid hugging his mom, Shimura. The kids learn this, and as the kids comment, like, oh, let's pay hero siblings behind their dad or whatever. Later that day, Shigaraki plays with the family dog, Mon. The moment where he throws a ball to have the dog fetch it, his quirk begins to manifest, and the small edge of the ball decays a bit. Shigaraki notices his hand being weird, but before he could think of it, Shigaraki's father pops up to see him. And let me just tell you, he wasn't happy at all. In fact, he was livid, asking his son if he saw that photo. And we also see the other family members there in the kitchen when the scene was going on, and Hana's there crying to her mother, saying that Shigaraki wanted to see it too. I mean, at that point, whatever Shigaraki said couldn't change the outcome. Of his dad being angry, he told his son that that woman isn't his grandmother, but a savage who abandoned her family. He slapped Shigaraki while Shigaraki within his mind pleads, hoping someone from his family will step in, but of course that didn't happen. Later in the evening, Shigaraki's father was in his office looking through the letters of his mom, Shimura, wrote for him. He reads them and recalls some memories of their short time together when he was a kid. Having read those letters, his wife comes in along with her parents, saying he's gone too far. The father realizes this and acknowledges this. The mom tells him if he's going to raise his hand on the kids, then she won't follow his rules anymore, and asks him if he wants a happy family. He replies that this wasn't supposed to happen. Following that, we see a young Shigaraki crying outside while holding his dog, Mon. While venting his frustration, saying he hates everyone, his dog, Mon, begins to decay and falls apart from Shigaraki's manifested quirk. Seeing this, Shigaraki started to freak out at what he did, and didn't stop there as his sister Hana comes out to apologize to Shigaraki, but as she gets closer, she notices the dog remains, which led to her to let out a terrified scream. From that, Hana turns back, fleeing towards the house, and Shigaraki tries to get her attention, but when he gets in touch with Hana, she begins to decay and drop dead with her remains on the ground. Shigaraki became disturbed at what he did. He began scratching himself intensely, like a madman vomits. And guess what? His mom and grandparents saw what just happened. All three of them shocked and froze into place on what just happened. Shigaraki sees him, and from there, after realizing for himself, he has to put away with his father's abuse. And whenever that will happen, his family won't step in or point out that this is wrong to do so. Young Shigaraki makes up his mind as his pent-up emotions echoes his mind, saying, I hate you all. He uses his quirk on the ground to destroy the backyard as his mother runs towards him, trying to embrace her son. Just as her body began to decay slowly, and once they were in touching distance, she turned to dust. After that groundbreaking moment, it goes to the father who just left his office to come down, and once he came down, he was shocked to see what became his family's backyard. The ground is in shatters with body parts and remains of his family scattered among the terrain, and from afar, Shigaraki is of course still there, crying and scratching himself, stuttering to his dad that he's sorry. As he activates his quirk once more towards his dad and the house, the dad is frightened of the sight of the scenery, while his son calls his name. He grabs a post-it and whacks Shigaraki at his face, following up with him telling his son to stop. But from that moment there, will eventually seal his fate, with the present Shigaraki narrating a scene where at the time back then, he had a clear intent to kill. And young Shigaraki's rage was clear from the side of his eyes, where he lashed at his dad, putting all 5 fingers on his face. Shigaraki drops his dad to the ground, screaming him to die with the ground surrounding them, along with the house totally demolished. From that time, Shigaraki remembers that moment as a moment where he felt the pleasure coursing throughout his body, and that he always wanted it for things to turn out this way. Once the house had fallen, Shigaraki's hand was soaked in fresh blood of his now dead father. We see the view of young Shigaraki with an evil, satisfying smile on his face, with him hunched over as a result of this massacre. The narration of Shigaraki's present self comments I didn't itch anymore as the episode ends there. Well, that episode was something else, really. Bones really blessed us here, not gonna lie. The anime adaptation of it was really well done, and it's what we all been waiting for. And I can't believe that this is the second to last episode of the season. At least from what I believe so. But anyway, Bones deserves a credit here. And after I watched that episode, I wonder who's the better father? Shigaraki's dad or is it Shoto Todoroki's father? To me, it's kind of split, but I gotta be honest, I might have to pick Shigaraki's father. But yes, he could make kids for Endeavor because back then he didn't really care about his kids that much. He put his sole purpose onwards Shoto, Endeavor's prodigy son, who never really gave Shoto his fatherly love. But at least Shoto didn't turn out to be a serial killer, unlike Shigaraki. With that, I kind of believe now that Shigaraki's father was probably the worst, since Endeavor now is trying to amend his sins. Shigaraki's father has his reasons for disliking heroes because of his mother leaving him behind. He really put his anti-hero agenda way too harshly on his own kids, which made Shigaraki suffer, and for the long run. And because of that, Shigaraki ended up having trauma onto his family that led up to their deaths. And from that backstory finally being told, I would like to say thank you all for watching this video. And if you do, please give this video a like. And if you want, consider subscribing to my channel for more macadamia content. And also follow my Twitter at akib down in the description below. And see you all next time in the next video. Peace.